Hello viewers and welcome to another match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I present a game taken from the 2016 Siege of Terra, an 81-person unofficial Conquest LCG tournament which took place earlier this year in Milan, Italy. On the left we see someone I consider to be a dear friend of mine. It's none other than our 2015 Dutch national champion himself, Dan Jung. And for today's game, he's going to be piloting one of his personal favorite warlords, our Dark Eldar faction, Packmaster Kith. But on the opposite end of the table resides a player running the Tyranids. It is a gentleman named Spyros Karagiannis, and he's going to be playing as Old One-Eye, along with the Stalking Lictor. But Dan begins today's game holding our initiative token, and his first deploy action is going to be positioning a copy of Siren Zithlex out at planet number 1. So, for the cost of 3, our Dark Eldar faction loyal unique army unit has 2 command icons to attack, 3 hit points, and whenever an enemy unit happens to be deployed at her planet, it ends up being exhausted. So, outside of Old One-Eye himself arriving at that planet, her ability is sufficiently powerful that I would not be at all surprised if our Dark Eldar player managed to capture Planet 1 entirely uncontested. But at planet number 2, laid out by our Tyranid, we've now got a copy of the Volatile Pyrovore, a rather efficient unit weighing in at a cost of 3 resources with 1 command icon, 3 attack, as well as 3 hit points, and further, as a reaction, whenever it happens to be destroyed by an attack, it can deal out 3 points of damage directly to its assailant. But immediately opposite that unit, Dan has put out a copy of the 2-cost Warlock Destructor. It's got a command icon, it's a 3/4 Psyker trait unit, meaning that it unlocks your ability to play Mind War, and as a forced reaction, although you have to pay an additional 1 resource or discard it at the beginning of your deploy phase, you can scarcely go wrong with just how much statistical power that card affords you for the low cost of 2 resources. But at planet number 4, both of our players lay down a copy of their respective factions' 2-cost, 2-command icon unit. For our Tyranid, we've got a copy of the 0/2 Toxic Venomthrope, and for our Dark Eldar player, we've got a copy of the 3/1 Incubus Warrior. For our Tyranid, whenever he happens to win a command struggle at that planet, thanks to the Venomthrope, that planet ends up being infested, or should it already have an infestation token, then our Tyranid is going to be rewarded in the form of a bonus card or 1 bonus resource. Both of our players are currently considering where exactly they want to send their Warlords and or Synapse units. Bear in mind that planet number 4 is Taurus, and if you win a battle at that planet and you control fewer units than your opponent, then you're rewarded with your choice of 3 cards or 3 resources. And considering Packmaster Kith's predilection for generating those 2/1 creature trait Chimera tokens, that just might be a fantastic destination for Old One-Eye indeed, just because he's a 2/6 Warlord, and even if he ends up stomaching an attack from that Incubus Warrior, he's got his inherent regeneration ability to kind of take a little bit of the risk away from your opponent tossing out a shield card and preserving their rather hard-hitting economy unit. Planet number 2 is going to be Planum, which allows you to relocate a non-Warlord unit, and considering we've got Siren Zithlex on the table, I wouldn't be surprised to see Packmaster Kith either show up at 2 to try to win at Planum to potentially get a planet 1, 2, 3 victory if you're able to move your Siren from planet to planet and ensure that your opponent deploys as many units that only end up being exhausted as possible. Or I also think it would be rather reasonable for Kith to go to planet number 4 just to try to block off Old One-Eye's ability to potentially win at that planet. Planet number 1 itself is going to be Aatrox Prime, the bombardment planet, where you pick your enemy HQ or an adjacent planet, and all enemy units at your target take 1 point of damage, but at the moment neither player has really come across a sufficient number of units where that's really a desirable ability to pursue. The Stalking Lictor kind of has its choice in that it could show up to planet number 4 to attempt to win command at that location, infest that planet, but I think it's rather likely Kith may indeed show up at that planet. Looks like that was not the case. So it's going to be Stalking Lictor showing up at 5, no contest. Old One Eye is going to arrive at planet number 4, trying to trigger Taurus, and Kith is going to show up at planet number 2 to attempt, in my mind at least, to likely relocate our Siren. But planet number 1 is going to be a card and a resource for Packmaster Kith. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource for Packmaster Kith. Planet number 3 is going to be no contest. Planet number 4 is going to be a card and a resource for our Tyranid player, and thanks to that Toxic Venom Thrope, that planet is now going to be infested. So keep a lookout for Dark Cunning, now played for 2, and then refunding 1 resource by our Tyranid for, the ability to ready a non-Warlord unit. Planet number 5 is going to be a couple of resources for Packmaster Kith. Planet number 1 is going to be captured, no contest, by Dan. Siren Zithlex is going to bounce into Kith's HQ, and that's going to be Aatrox Prime firing and dealing a point of damage to the Volatile Pyrovore, and it's just a bit of a damn shame that was not the final point of damage dealt to that unit, just because if it's destroyed by a card effect and not an attack, then it doesn't actually have any ability to trigger its reaction, and that means that there's 1 red and 1 blue icon currently sitting in Kith's victory display. The Warlock Destructor takes a swing because Kith has initiative at planet number 2. A Spore Burst is interjected as a shield, and that means that the Volatile Pyrovore is only going to take 3 - 2 = 1 point of damage. So it's barely clinging on, but now the Pyrovore itself takes a swing. Looks like that is going to be a dead Chimera token, and now Kith is kind of left with a crappy choice. Kith can either attack and kill the Volatile Pyrovore and then take 3 points of damage in return, or Kith can retreat from that planet. We can come to the end of a combat round. Maybe the Tyranid will retreat, or maybe the Tyranid will stay, and provided the Warlock Destructor stays, it could take a swing, kill the Volatile Pyrovore, take 3 damage in return, and then Dan could simply choose not to pay that forced reaction and just let the Warlock Destructor die, but looks like that is not the case. Kith is going to take a swing. Raid is going to be discarded as a shield, so that reaction only deals out 1 point of damage to Packmaster Kith. We come to the end of a combat round, and that's going to be a second battle ability, second free card effect here, triggered by Dan Jung. So that's going to be Planum. So Dan's already got 1 blue icon. He could move Siren Zithlex to planet number 1 to set up to easily win the following round, and then keep that train going. Shift Siren from, say, planet number 1 to planet number 2 this round, and then next round from planet number 1 to planet number 2, the possible victory condition for Dan. Or he could do something trickier. He could save his Incubus Warrior, he could move that away from Old One Eye's planet, or he could be like a bit of, a courageous fellow, and it looks like he's actually moving his Warlock Destructor to Old One Eye's planet. So Old One Eye is going to have initiative at planet number 4. Looks like his first combat turn is spent to retreat, so very interesting there. That's going to be a swing of the Incubus Warrior, killing off that Toxic Venom Thrope, and that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 units controlled by Dan relative to the 2 of Old One Eye. So Dan, of course, is not going to be able to trigger that planet. Had Old One Eye stayed and fought tooth and claw, killed off the Warlock Destructor and the Incubus Warrior, all he would have been rewarded from through his tireless efforts there would have been the ability to not trigger Taurus, because it would have been 2 units to 2 units. Or it may have been a dead Synapse unit, or more likely it could have been a bloodied Old One Eye, because he can only regenerate once per round, and you can only pull half the damage tokens off of yourself, and that doesn't always cut it when you're up against a 3-4 and a 3-1. But regardless, the initiative token is now going to be in Spyros' possession. We've now got a new 5th new 5th planet. It's going to be Barless, the forced random card discard planet. And note that having moved through an HQ phase, our first HQ phase actually, that's going to be 4 resources gained, as well as 2 cards drawn by each of our players. At planet number 1, we've got a copy of the Yumgarl Gene Stealer played out by our Tyranid. That's going to be a fantastic target for Klavex War Leader and Archon's Terror, because it's going to be a 5-cost elite Tyranid with 2 command icons, 4 attack, as well as 4 hit points. Whenever a Warlord is present, it gets +2 attack, as does any of the other Warlord friend units, and as a Synapse friend, whenever a Synapse unit is present, it gets a persistent +2 HP bonus, at least until the Synapse unit returns to your HQ. So, I guess our Tyranid still has 3 resources remaining. The Yumgarl Genestealer is going to be definitely something to look out for in regard to Dark Cunning, or maybe even Awakening Cavern at some point, where you could potentially strike for 6 multiple times. Speak the Devil, looks like we've got a copy of the signature support Awakening Cavern being placed in Spyros' HQ. So Old One-Eye's Sig support basically allows you to exhaust it as an action to pick and choose a unit of yours to ready. It does come at the cost of exhausting that support, but considering you can use that on your Warlord or your Synapse unit or a Tyranid Elite, that is potentially fantastic. And even though Kith is pretty strong, she's not going to be able to survive the, withering fire of a 6 attack value Elite that can attack multiple times during the same phase. She's not going to be able to handle that kind of firepower for long. So Kith is going to have her movement somewhat restricted by that copy of Siren Zithlex, so therefore now it would be a rather poor life choice for Kith to show up at planet number 1 because that Genestealer is nicely going to be able to defend Planum, and now Kith is going to have to kind of recalculate her earliest possible victory condition. So Dan does have 1 blue and 1 red material and technology type icon, so he could win at planets 2 and 3, and that could be the game there, or he could start collecting green icons, and then any 3 of the present planets he could just win through that. Planet number 5, we've got a copy of Rogue Trader, 1 cost, 1 command icon, 0/1 with a +1 resource bonus. And at planet number 2, we've got a copy of Bloody Reavers, also played out by Kith. So for the cost of 2, that's a 2/2 with a command icon. It's another Warlord friend. So if Old One-Eye is present, it's potentially going to be able to attack for 4, but it's also sitting upon the healing planet Iridial. So Old One-Eye could practically be dead, and so long as he does survive that battle, he's going to be able to have the opportunity to pull all the damage off of him. Note that at planet number 4, we've got a copy of the signature army unit Kith's Chimera Masters. They're a 2 cost, 1 command icon, 1/2, but they provide the added benefit of generating a Chimera token at their planet. Looks like Old One-Eye is being awfully bold indeed. He's going to be showing up at planet number 3, opposite that Warlock Destructor and Incubus Warrior. So Kith shows up at planet number 2, Old One-Eye is planet number 3, Stalking Lictor is at planet number 4. Planet number 1 is going to be a card and a resource for our Tyranid. Planet number 2 is going to be a card for Kith. Planet number 3 is going to be a card and a resource for Old One-Eye. Planet number 4 is going to be a couple of resources for Old One-Eye, and planet number 5 is going to be a couple of cards and 1 resource for Dan. He definitely made planet number 5 a rather repetitive target for our Tyranid player, but I can't really exactly see how Old One-Eye is going to be able to win at planet number 3 outside of relying on something along the lines of like Ferocious Strength. I guess maybe the best case scenario, well, okay, I guess I spoke too soon because, yeah, planet number 1, of course, being Planum, would normally provide a fantastic opportunity for Old One-Eye to move one of his units. He was going to move the Yumgarl Genestealer to planet number 3 and then kill that Warlock Destructor with a swing of 6. Old One-Eye could have presumably killed the Incubus Warrior with a swing of 2, or you could have used Awakening Cavern, but regardless, Planum is indeed captured by Spyros, but we happen to see a copy of Foretell, so Kith exhausts. There's that 0-cost common Eldar event, which cancels the battle ability of Planum, and Kith manages to draw 1 card in the process. So, looks like we've got battle breaking out at planet number 3. Kith loses 1 point of damage from winning the battle ability at Iridial there. Old One-Eye took a swing at presumably the Incubus Warrior, then the Incubus Warrior took a swing in return for 3, because suffering as a shield means that Old One-Eye's 2 points of damage hit 0, and he was not able to do really anything about it. Alright, so here's what I was wondering if we were going to see. We see a copy of the signature event, the 1-cost Tyranid signature event, Ferocious Strength. Old One-Eye is going to get brutal until the end of the combat round, so he's now swinging for 5. But is it going to be directed toward the Warlock Destructor, or is it going to be directed instead toward the guaranteed kill Incubus Warrior? I suppose to I guess fortune favors the bold. You could say Old One-Eye going for the Warlock Destructor if he's going to be able to kill that. Okay, I guess he doesn't end up going for that, so that's going to be a swing of 5 toward the Incubus Warrior. It's going to be killed. The Warlock Destructor takes a swing. That's going to be Heavy Venom Cannon discarded as a shield. Old One-Eye is going to have 4 total points of damage. He readies at the end of the combat round. He triggers his reaction to pull 2 points of damage off of them. Half of the amount of damage he has rounded down. He's going to end up retreating. Taurus is is not going to be able to be activated by Kith. What I was thinking he could have done is Old One-Eye could have potentially directed his swing of 5 toward that Warlock Destructor. If Dan wouldn't have had a 2 shield value card, he would have been able to kill it, and if that was the case, we'd have come to the end of a combat round. Old One-Eye would have had the opportunity to attack first and kill off that Incubus Warrior, or if he wouldn't have been able to kill it off, then the Incubus Warrior would have maybe retreated. So I think the best case scenario is Old One-Eye would have maybe been able to kill 2 enemy units, or the Incubus Warrior would have been able to retreat, and if Dan would have managed to kill the Warlock Destructor with his first swing, Old One-Eye wouldn't have even taken those 3 additional points of damage. Well, I guess, you know, he wouldn't have had to discard that Heavy Venom Cannon, which, even though it's kind of sketchy card, 2 shield card is a 2 shield card, and you definitely don't just want to throw those away. But regardless, another HQ phase is come and gone. That's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for each of our players. Note that at planet number 1, Kith has got a rather significant amount of units indeed. Old One-Eye is going to be bringing his Yumgarl Genestealer with him wherever it is that he goes. If Kith is going to be able to win at planets number 1 and planets number 2, that is going to be the game for Dan. And looks like Spyros is going to have to, I guess, the easiest way for him to win is to either capture planets number 1 or 2 to deny Dan his victory condition, and then after that you could just win any additional 1 planet, and then you'll be at 3 green strong point type icons. But it's definitely going to be a bit of an uphill battle at this point for our Tyranid. Our Tyranid player does have significantly more resources than Dan appears to, so it's going to be 7 resource tokens for Old One-Eye, and it looks like Dan maybe has 5. So Dan has at this point had to invest, a total of 4 resources into his Warlock Destructor. Note that the very last planet to be seen in this game is going to be Elwith, that planet number 5, which allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, to add 1 of those to your hand and put the remaining 2 on the bottom of your deck in the order of your choice. And now a couple of fantastically powerful cards here. Looks like Old One-Eye is bound and determined to end up winning Taurus at some point. We've got a copy of the 2-cost loyal Dark Eldar faction support now in Dan's HQ. It's going to be Archon's Palace. So whenever our Tyranid wins a command struggle, Dan can simply exhaust that support, pick the card or resource bonus associated with the site of that struggle, and reduce it to 0, which includes any and all card bonuses. But our Tyranid player doesn't generally benefit from a lot of those, outside of something along the lines of maybe Subject Omega with Genestealer Harvesters. But we've now got 2 elites in play for our Tyranid, and need I say it again, I can scarcely think of a better target for the likes of Archon's Terror and or Clevex Warleader. All that Dan has to do is win the next 2 planets, or win any 3 remaining planets anywhere on the board here. So Dan is almost out of resources. He's just got 2 left, and for our Tyranid player, I'm trying to run through what his different options are. He's got signature army units, those lurking Hormagaunts, which he could toss out into play. He's also got the Scything Hormagaunts, and looks like Dan is continuing to deploy stall by tossing out a copy of Promotion, currently on the Kith's Chimera Masters at Planet 3. So where might Kith want to show up? Kith doesn't have any additional units in her HQ, but if Kith arrives at, say, planet number 2, she's going to risk potentially being swung at for 6 by the Yumgarl Genestealer, unless she's got an Archon's Terror in hand. Or, I suppose, if that Warlock Destructor has an opportunity to swing at the Yumgarl Genestealer and is able to damage it, if we don't see the Great Scything Talons, discarded as a shield, then the Yumgarl Genestealer will take a point of damage, and as soon as that occurs, a Clevex Warleader will swing that battle immediately, because it's going to be the elite Tyranid removed from play courtesy of that reaction. So we see a 0-cost limited card. It's going to be a Ripper Swarm, a 0-cost 1 command icon, 1/1 army unit tossed out by our Tyranid, and I just cannot help but wonder what these players are trying to hide. They've got so many deploy stalls going back and forth here. So It's trying to say, Old One-Eye, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to planet number 2, because that blocks Kith's victory condition, and Old One-Eye is definitely going to be incentivized by trying to win 3 cards or 3 resources. But, bearing that in mind, Kith, it wouldn't be the worst choice for her to arrive at planet number 5 to collect a couple of cards and kill that Ripper Swarm, and of course prevent the Tyranid player from collecting that command. But let's say if Old One-Eye instead goes to planet number 1, that would be Old One-Eye swinging first. It could be the Ymgarl Genestealer killing that bloodied... Well, the Ymgarl Genestealer will arrive exhausted, but you could use Awakening Cavern to ready it. It could swing for 6 at the Bloodied Reavers and kill it. Then it would be Siren Zithlex, only being able to swing at Old One-Eye. Old One-Eye would take 2 points of damage, and at the end of a combat round, you need not even bother with healing him, because if he's going to be able to trigger the healing planet Iridial, then that could work out fantastically. So will Old One-Eye go to planet number 1 or planet number 2? Will Kith arrive at planet, I don't know, 4 to make sure that her Rogue Trader gets that bonus, or will she instead arrive at planet number 5 just to potentially win those additional couple of cards and block her opponent from being able to do so? I wouldn't be surprised to see the Stalking Lictor show up at, I guess you could say planet number 3, or maybe even planet number 2. Like, currently the Tyranid player is winning at planet number 2 in regard to the command struggles. We've got a copy of Lurking Hormigaunt, the signature army unit, now at planet number 3. It's a 2-cost, 1 command icon, 3/1, and even though it just has 1 hit point, whenever it's assigned damage, you can reassign up to 2 points of damage to Old One-Eye there. So if Old One-Eye is just going to be able to, regenerate that damage away, probably during a subsequent round, because, like, unless he retreats, he maintains his state when you capture a planet. I guess we'll just have to see what exactly happens. There's a lot of different variables to consider here, but both of our players are currently deciding where exactly they want to send their warlords. For Old One-Eye, will it be planet number 1, or will it instead be planet number 2? And how daring is Kith willing to be? She does have 2 resources. She's likely to be gaining some additional resources here during the command phase, and if she's got 2 resources, then that's going to be a great threshold to toss out Archon's Terror, great at removing elites, or she could also make benefit of a Clavex Warleader, and if you could kill Genestealer and then deal out a bunch of damage to Old One-Eye, Clavex Warleader is just fantastic. Old One-Eye only swings for 2, and our Tyranid has already gotten rid of one of his 2 copies of Ferocious Strength, so I think it's unlikely that Old One-Eye is going to be reaching surprising heights of attack value, especially considering he does not have his signature Great Scything Talons. So, what exactly do we see? It's going to be Kith going to planet 3. Old One-Eye goes to planet 2. So he is going to be reinforcing that planet big time. And, I guess planet number 1 is going to be a resource for Packmaster Kith. Bear in mind, we've got a copy of Archon's Palace that could be modifying things for our Tyranid player. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource for our Tyranid. Planet number 3 is going to be a couple of resources for Kith. Planet number 4 is going to be the Stalking Lictor winning command at that planet over that Rogue Trader, but Archon's Palace is going to shut down that 2-card bonus, so nothing there for our Tyranid. And then planet number 5 looks like our Tyranid manages to get 2 cards in total. So planet number 1 is going to be 1 with nothing that our Old One-Eye player is doing to contest the Dark Eldar presence at that planet. That's going to be another Tri-Con planet added to Dan's victory display, and now all he's going to have to do is win either planet number 2, or I guess planet number 5, though the player that wins the last planet wins the game always. But let's say if Dan wins at planet number 2, the following round's planet number 1, that could be the game for him, or Old One-Eye is going to have to win at our soon-to-be planet 1, or, and or 2, and or 3. So we've got a Ymgarl Genestealer that swings, manages to kill that Warlock Destructor, so that was an incredibly expensive unit over the course of this game, but it cannot resist a swing of 6. That's going to be another opportunity for Packmaster Kith, just being a little bit of a witch, as is printed upon her card. That's another copy of Foretell. That cancels Taurus's battle ability, and it cantrips, which means that Kith gets to draw a card for no cost apart from just exhausting the Warlord unit there. So fantastic effect all in all, and that has paid off twice big time against Old One-Eye. But now, man, Old One-Eye is really set up very well to block off Dan's victory conditions, so Dan is going to have to hope to high hell that he's got a large number of Clavex Warleaders to block that effect. Okay, so here we go. Lurking Hormigaunt at Planet 3 takes a swing from Kith, but a discard of it's 2 damage is reassigned to Old One-Eye. It takes a swing at Kith. Raid is discarded as a shield. Our Tyranid player uses No Mercy, and that is going to be 3 points of damage dealt to Packmaster Kith. A Chimera token takes a swing at the Lurking Hormigaunt. We see Great Scything Talons, the signature attachment, discarded as a shield. Wow, that is going to be... The Lurking Hormigaunt survives, and that is going to be twice. No Mercy activated by the Stalking Lictor, and again, No Mercy activated by Old One-Eye. That's going to be 2 swings of 3, and that is going to be a bloodied Packmaster Kith. So that was one hell of a play. Note that, wow, Old One-Eye's got 4 points of damage on him, then he takes another point of damage from that Chimera Master. At the end of the combat round, our Tyranid decides to retreat his signature army unit because he does not have initiative. That's going to be -1 resource for our Tyranid if he had any resources remaining, which I don't think he did, and that's going to be +1 resource for Dan if our Tyranid player had any resources remaining, which I just said I don't think he did. At the end of the round, we go through an HQ phase, all of our cards ready. Note that Old One-Eye, whom had 5 points of damage, removes 2.5 tokens, rounded up to 3 off of him, so now Old One-Eye only has 2 points of damage. Packmaster Kith is going to be bloodied, and now I believe that Packmaster Kith is something like a lowly 1/5 Warlord, although it's not often I see Packmaster Kith on her bloodied side, so I could definitely be wrong. But both of our players have drawn 2 cards. They've each come across 4 resource tokens. Note that our Tyranid is going to be set up fantastically to win. At planet number 1, we see another copy of the Lurking Hormigaunt signature army unit put out into play by Old One-Eye at planet number 2, and wow, that double No Mercy play was just absolutely ridiculous. So, now Dan is going to be terrified of sending his Warlord to planet number 1 because if those Yumgarl Genestealers are going to be able to attack for 6, if our Tyranid player has another copy of No Mercy, then unless Kith runs away as her first combat turn, she's going to end up being just absolutely wrecked and rent apart by the, I guess, just the Yumgarl strange Cthulhu-esqueness of those Tyranid elites. Like, it looks like they've got Crushing Claws and Rending Claws. Anyways, the artwork of those units is just bizarre, especially if you look at the extended art version. But the most important thing, the take-home point here, is if Kith shows up at planet number 1, she's likely going to be assassinated, which would be a bad choice for Kith as a destination. If Kith arrives at planet number 2, she's going to have to deal with that Lurking Hormigaunt, which could potentially just reassign damage to Old One-Eye, and this is all going to come down to Kith is going to need these Archon's Terrors and Clavex Warleaders. If Kith would have been able to get rid of that copy of Lurking Hormigaunts, like, you have to kind of play in anticipation of No Mercy, but it's not exactly something you can work around. The Lurking Hormigaunt was not damaged, so you can't Clavex Warleader it, and granted, you could have maybe Archon's Terrored it, but you don't know that the risk is there until your opponent does the whole surprise No Mercy play, and seeing 2 of those back-to-back, dear God, not expected to say the least. But, interesting couple of plays. Planet number 4, we've now got a copy of Warlock Destructor, tying the command of that Ripper Swarm, albeit at 2 greater resource investment. Plus, each and every deploy phase, you're going to have to keep investing in that unit just to keep it on the tabletop. So Dan must be in desperate want of cards indeed. We've now got a copy of the Regeneration attachment affixed to that Lurking Hormigaunt at planet number 2, so for the cost of 1, it's now going to be a 3/3, and as an action, you can exhaust that attachment in order to remove 2 points of damage from it. At planet number 3, we've probably got one of the lamest Tyranid cards. It is nevertheless ubiquitous, rather popular choice. It's going to be the 1-cost, 1-command icon, 1/2 Termagant Sentry. Whenever a Termagant token happens to be destroyed at its same planet, you're given the opportunity to ready it. But that's a pretty middling effect, and considering that Old One-Eye isn't exactly running a large number of Termagant tokens, as has been abundantly clear over the course of this game, I can't really see that ability coming into play at all. But at the very least, the Termagant Sentry there is blocking off the one, bonus associated with the Rogue Trader there. Something that really stinks for Kith is wherever she wants to go, she's going to have to drop off her, wherever Kith goes, she's going to drop off her retinue from the HQ, and if our Tyranid wins at planet number 1 and then planet number 2, that's going to be the game going to our Tyranid player. So Kith is maybe going to want to arrive at planet number 2, but if Kith does that, if Kith wins that planet during the following round, that's not going to be her victory condition. She'd have to win at planets number 2 and 3, and unless we've got a double Archon's Tear, then Kith may as well just kiss planet number 1 goodbye. So is Old One-Eye going to be arriving at planet number 1 just to make sure that he blocks off his opponent's victory condition in the context of a double Archon's Terror, or is Old One-Eye going to go someplace else? Like if Old One-Eye is going to go to planet number 2, that's a more, like it's a riskier choice because you're going to allow your opponent the potential opportunity to win at planet number 1, but, you know, I guess, I don't know, there's not really a whole lot of reason for Old One-Eye to go to planet number 2. So we might see planet number 1 and then number 2 for Old One-Eye just to do the conservative slow win thing, or we might see something else. But regardless, I think it would be a horrible decision for Kith to show up at planet number 1. It would probably be okay if Kith were to go to planet number 2, although she would have to retreat, and then some of her units would start to get killed off by that lurking Hormigaunt. But she'd certainly have a reasonable amount of damage to deal out to the Hormigaunt. But in the context of regeneration and shields, and reassigning damage to Old One-Eye himself, it's going to be able to take a lot of punishment to bring down, and considering Regeneration's ability to regenerate units, considering Old One-Eye's ability to remove damage tokens from himself, the lurking Hormigaunt could easily end up retreating. Again, our Tyranid doesn't have any resource tokens currently, and that could just be a fantastic opportunity for you know, I guess Old One-Eye to just preserve his units and just shave off a ton of damage tokens, but looks like maybe we'll have fortune favor the bold here. That's the Stalking Lictor arriving at planet number 3. Old One-Eye arrives at planet number 4. Let's see if this comes back to bite him in the ass. At planet number 1, Kith shows up. She drops Bloodied Reavers and Siren Zithlax, but she's going to be opposite 2 6 attack value, 4 hit point Tyranid Elites. So planet number 1 is going to be a card and resource for Kith. Planet 2 is going to be 2 resources for Kith. Planet number 3 is going to be a couple of cards for our Tyranid. No, actually it's going to be Archon's Palace, shutting that off, and then planet number 4 is going to be a couple of resources for Old One-Eye, and he's going to be fighting a copy of Warlock Destructor, maybe setting himself up for a last planet victory. So let's hope for Kith's sake she's got a couple of Archon's Terrors, because then that would result in a potentially rather simple victory here for planet number 1. A rather simple victory at planet number 1 for Kith. She'd be able to pick up a 3rd material type icon, and that would be the game for Dan, or I guess a Clavex War Leader would just go miles in helping to preserve Dan's hide here, but Packmaster Kith is going to have to retreat really early on because that is still a 6-cost elite staring him down. We see 1 copy of Archon's Terror banish one of those Yumgarl Genestealers from that planet, and now Kith is going to have to retreat. The Genestealer is going to be able to attack for 6. Awakening Cavern is going to allow it to attack for 6 again, so Kith needs to get the hell away from that planet. Unless she has another Archon's Terror, then this is going to look pretty crappy for Kith, and she is going to have to survive long enough to deal a point of damage to that Yumgarl Genestealer for something along the lines of a Clavex War Leader to be able to kill it. So let's say Kith ends up retreating. If that's the case, the Yumgarl Genestealer can attack for 4, kill the Bloodied Reavers, then Awakening Cavern readies it. It attacks for 4 and potentially kills off Siren Zithlax, and then that's going to be that planet 1 by our Tyranid, and it's going to be that battle ability 1. In that case, Kith is going to have been retreated. Kith does retreat. That means she's exhausted. That means there's no opportunity for a 3rd Foretell. That's going to be a swing directed towards Siren Zithlax, interestingly. And that, oh my god, that is going to be another copy of No Mercy. So that is going to be Suffering Ignored as a shield card. That's going to be a dead copy of Siren Zithlax, and here we go. That is going to be, is it going to be Awakening Cavern? Yes, that's going to be that Genestealer readied, and that is going to be another swing of 4. Is that going to kill? No, that's going to be the Agonizer of Bren discarded. Wow, so a 3 shield value card. That means the Bloodied Reavers only takes 1 point of damage, and now what exactly are we going to see? Dan, do you have a Clavex War Leader to just get some more damage on that, you know, outgoing at that planet? you know, I guess Kith does have initiative, but what exactly are we going to see? If Dan's got a War Leader in hand, he's got initiative, so when we come to the end of a combat round here, the Bloodied Reavers can swing for 4, and then if Dan has a copy of Klavex War Leader, that could be the game right here. It's going to be a swing of 4 by Dan. No, there's no Warlord present, so Spore Burst is 2 minus 2 is 0. The Yumgarl Genestealer takes nothing. That is going to be a copy of Klavex War Leader, though. It's dropped into play. It's going to be 3 points of damage to the Yumgarl Genestealer, and does Dan have an additional Klavex War Leader or not? I guess our Tyranid has been throwing out those 2 shield value cards fast and furious, and now if we come to the end of a combat round, these units are going to ready, and then the Klavex War Leader is going to be able to attack again for 3. There's going to be absolutely nothing that Spyros could have done about it, because he used that copy of Great Scything Talons, and that is going to be the GG right there. So congratulations to Dan Jung for managing to win this game that he played at the 81-person 2016 Siege of Terra. It was one hell of an event. It ultimately ended up being won by my dear friend, friend of the channel, Pagemon Kamai. Dan was not so fortunate as to end up winning the tournament himself, but nevertheless, this was one hell of a game and a spectacularly well-played match by Spyros Karagiannis all the same. So, dear viewers, let this be a lesson that, unlike as is the wont of the Hive Tyrant himself, and of course as our Tyranid player did in this video, sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry and to just make that conservative Warlord commit, just to make all but certain that your enemy does not snatch victory out from under your nose. But again, congratulations to Dan. Thank you to Spyros for allowing me to publish this game, and a tremendous thanks to each and every individual which helped contribute to making the Siege of Terra event the spectacular success that it was. So again, thank you to everyone involved in providing me with this footage, and as always, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, as ever, I always encourage you to share this content, because the more engagement these videos receive, all of it means more individuals stand to be exposed to Conquest. They might give this living card game a try, enjoy what they experience, someday join our community, and of course, the greater we are in number, the bigger message we send to Fantasy Flight Games telling them to continue to support this fantastic product. Please leave a comment below letting me know what you thought of each player's strategy and overall deck building. Plus, if you ever feel like engaging with me on social media, I would be absolutely honored were you to reach out and follow me on Facebook or on Twitter. If you ever feel inclined to help give back to the Hive Tyrant to support this channel, I would be honored were you to make as little as $1 a month contribution to my Patreon page, just because it all goes to helping me cover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, and each and every additional dollar is only going to be reinvested in attempting to further improve the audio and video quality of this channel. So, as always, thank you so much for watching, and once again, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.